Good morning and welcome to Living in McKenzie County podcast. My name is Vawnita Best, Community and Business Development, City of Watford City, and we are very excited today about the topic. And we actually were having a hard time coming up with what we were going to call it. So I think we're going to go short here. Public governance, the local city-county working relationship that we have in Watford City and McKenzie County. And we're going to start off the 60 minutes to 90 minutes we have together today on our long form to really help the listeners understand how Watford City and McKenzie County are funded and how we go about the process of creating budgets, making projects happen, providing public services, operations, maintenance, all of the things that create the lifestyle that we have in our local area here. So before we get too far into our discussion, let's go around the table and do self-introductions, and let's go counterclockwise today. So let's start with Erica.
Good morning. My name is Erica Johnsrud. I am the elected auditor treasurer here in McKenzie County. I am a local native McKenzie County resident. My husband and I actually live on the farm my grandfather owned for a long time, the house my dad was raised in. So I love being back here in McKenzie County, Watford City area, and looking forward to our conversation today.
Excellent. Thanks for being here, Erica. Phil?
Phil Riely, Mayor of Watford City, also a local fella. I guess my dad moved here like 52 years ago. It's the only job he's ever had. He was a telephone guy here. So, but local family, youngest of four, all went to the high school here. Moved back in 99 with my lovely wife, and since then we've added two children to the fold. And Mayor of Watford City, super happy to be here.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for joining us this morning. And Howdy.
Howdy, Lawlar, local. Been here all my life, I guess. Went to college. Went and taught actually as a school teacher for 2 years. Taught in Berthold, North Dakota, up just west of Minot. And then I came home and been farming and ranching with my dad. I'm actually living in the house that I was born and raised in, fifth generation on the farm. So it's been around a while. So decided to run for county commissioner a few years ago and got elected. And I guess been the chairman of the commission for a few years now and enjoy it. And so it's kind of been, getting to meet other people and relationships, I guess, through being a commissioner and working with budgets and all that fun stuff that everybody thinks is so easy. It's actually interesting to learn. So glad to be here this morning. So.
And maybe that, Howdy, is where we should start. I mean, we definitely have an outline. We don't want to miss anything we want to cover, but this is our opportunity for those listening to turn their podcast on, go tinker in the shop, go, play around in the kitchen and put together your meal, whatever you're going to do, but really have a conversation about how we provide services to the people. And, I guess one of the points that I had noted right away in our conversation is we just had an election last week, and Measure 4 was on the ballot. And, that was, I think, a realization at that point in time for local political subs to maybe realize there was a disconnect between how services were provided and how people understood the funding of those services. So what I can say is if we would have walked through the high school halls of Watford City in like maybe 1990, we all would have bumped into each other. And I think that something that's very special about our public servants in Western North Dakota in this area is everybody's always focused on the people and the services and, getting the job done. So Erica, can you start just a little bit? We definitely want people to understand property taxes and how they're calculated and what they do. And so what I can say is there's different ways, different local political subdivisions, which are groups of elected boards, approach them in different ways. But can you talk a little bit about what McKenzie County does, both Howdy from a commissioner's standpoint and Erica from the auditor, who's responsible for calculating them and certifying them, how that all happens?
Sure. We could talk for hours on this topic alone, but really it all begins with the budget process. And that for the county at least starts a little bit earlier than the commission probably likes it to happen. We're hardly out of Q1 of the next year, and we're starting looking at the forecast for what people see as needs for the following year. So that starts really at our department level, where they start to identify what staffing levels that they think that they need to provide for all of the projects that they want done, what capital projects we want done, what roads are the priorities that they're going to do, what water projects, how does our sheriff's office want to deliver law enforcement, what do all of those things look like? And so the department heads really take their time and they go through all of their different line items, determining what their priorities are. That eventually all gets turned over to me, and we work to compile that information for the commission. They meet in June every year to go through all of those budgets, department by department. It is a very long day with a few snacks along the way to keep everybody happy. But really, that's where the discussion happens, and the board is able to have a little bit more input on what they think the priorities are. And then we just start adjusting things. We also look at, everyone comes in with a wish list. It doesn't matter what budget you're working with. Everyone has their own wish list, and it's the commission's job to whittle that down into something that can be funded. So we look at our cash reserves on hand. We look at our forecast for what we might receive in gross production tax, which really is the county's major source of revenue. And then based on those priorities and how much cash we have, then the board has to decide what they want to levy in property taxes. And really that levy in property taxes is to cover the shortfall. So if a budget is short those dollars, can we levy those dollars in another way? Or do we have to come back and start cutting out projects, cutting out services, those sorts of things? So it's not an easy job. Our budget process lasts from March until October. So they spend a good part of the year talking about budgets and listening to me talk numbers and really focusing in on what all of that detail looks like. It is certainly nothing that is easy. It's not a one and done conversation. And we invite anyone in who wants to really talk about property taxes, wants to talk about budgets. They're welcome at any of our public meetings. And I love to talk about all of those things. So that's just kind of an overview snapshot of what that really looks like when we're talking budgets.
So one of the things that I heard you say, Erica, is you budget in dollars.
We do.
I can say without speaking for Mayor Riely that the city is similar, budget in dollars. One of the things that I observe, and I'm curious if you guys feel the same way, when you watch some governing boards budget in dollars, and you hear or see of other governing boards doing what they call writing values up, and really budgeting in mills. Does anybody want to talk a little bit about the importance of budgeting in dollars?
I can tell you what a dollar is. I'd have a very difficult time explaining what a mill is worth and how a mill is set. Because a mill is a term, it's not necessarily a set financial number. So that's when you direct people to Erica or Penny or somebody that can really explain what a mill is. Because I can tell you about a dollar bill, what $100 is and what $1,000 is. But a mill today might be a different mill than last year. So that's what I like the dollar bill. It's easier for me to explain to my mom or my uncle or someone coming off the street that wants to know about their property taxes. If all we did was talk about mills, I think there'd be a disconnect there between the general public and the local political subs. I think that's the nice part about dealing with dollar bills.
I think it'd be a fight. The conversations would be unproductive because, I give a lot of credit, all the credit to Erica to help us do what we do with our budgets. We get to decide and maneuver and do things, but she explains it and keeps it simple. I like that philosophy because if we don't understand it, how can we explain it to the people that have voted us in positions to sit there and say, hey, give us an example. And this way, when it comes to dollars, I've had many conversations of like, pull out your property tax bill. Let's go through it. And I'm on the phone and I'll have something of mine or I usually take a picture of mine just so I can, when I get a phone call, I'm able to remember kind of like what's on it all. And when we're talking dollars, it's like Phil said, it's simple. Okay, we're charging you $100 for fire protection. Okay, that's what you're paying for your fire protection. If we went and said we're charging you a mill of something, they'd be like, well, what is that? And like Phil said, it changes. And so, I mean, I have to be honest, I'm glad we deal with our dollars because it helps me out very much.
And I'll just add on that there's been a push from the legislature for governments, local governments, to talk in dollars and to levy in dollars. That's a really important thing. We want to be clear. We want to be transparent to the public. Honestly, the mill calculation, a mill is a conversion factor. That's really all it is. It is variable year to year, and it is the very last calculation that's done in budgets. So it's certainly not where we start at the front of the year. It actually happens at the very end as we're finalizing all of that and making sure that we can fund in dollars the priorities that the board, whatever governing board, has set.
And I think maybe that's probably the important takeaway is you identify the dollars you need to provide the services, and then you backwork the mill because your mill value changes every year with the opportunity or goal of making that property tax value pie as large as possible, because then everybody's sharing it out in smaller portions. And, it's, yes. So I just pulled something that I thought was interesting, and it's each year, it's the dollars levied by the city, for property tax, and then it's the mill conversion. But then on the other side of the column, it is the percentage in dollar increase. And as I look at it, we actually had a year where we went down because that was of how much property value growth we had in the community at that point in time. But most years, it's been under the inflationary rate. And so just, I guess, kudos to the elected boards in the community for keeping the budgets conservative, but still providing the services needed. So,
and from the county perspective, the board's priority over the last many years is to keep the dollars levied, which is about $6 million countywide, consistent. So they've done a really great job of staying right around that $6 million mark. $6 million in our budget of $250 to $300 million a year really isn't a whole lot.
now, to your point, Erica, let's take just a little bit of time before we get off of just the straight taxation piece and start talking about the fun stuff, which is services and projects. But let's just take a quick minute here and talk about gross production tax, what it is and why we receive it, because it's somewhat unique to the communities in Western North Dakota that are oil and gas impacted. So can we take a little time in case there's somebody from Fargo listening in and they're like, what is GPT? We don't have it. Let's take a little bit of time talking about what that means.
So I see all eyes are looking at me. Happy to talk about. So GPT stands for gross production tax. It is one of the taxes that producers, oil and gas producers, pay from the wellhead. And that tax actually goes and is distributed. There's a very complicated formula with a lot of different buckets. It funds many different things, but one of those things that it funds is local government. And the city, the county, all of our cities here in McKenzie County are fortunate to receive that. It goes to oil and gas producing counties, and there are several tiers of those counties as well. So we're one of the big four oil and gas producers. So we're also one of the big four that receive gross production tax. And that's really how we're funding most of the services that are being provided to the community. The board does a really great job of sharing those funds with the cities, with the townships, with the schools, with other community needs, just trying to make sure that we can fund, because we're impacted by those dollars, right? They're to help cover those impacts. They are dollars that we receive in lieu of taxes from those types of properties. And so they're really meant to help fund the impacts that we have here. Heavy trucks on roads, expansion of water. I mean, we've seen with the people coming into our community, we've had housing needs. And with that comes water and sewer and streets and garbage collection and all of those things that nobody really thinks of. And that's really what we focused on that GPT to fund for our community.
And I'll add just a little bit, and then maybe you guys have some words you want to talk about the subject too. But the history of it, in the 1950s, that's when our first oil boom hit. And at that time, the legislature said, we want a standardized way that when oil producers come into North Dakota, the taxes are standardized. And so they omitted or eliminated the ability for local political subs to charge or to assess property tax on downhole oil production. So, I have these one-on-one phone call conversations on just like, what if we didn't have GPT in lieu of property and we actually had the ability to assess property? And then you look at kind of like properties. And so you're, in my mind, justifying or understanding, like I feel like the formula is in a good place right now. It represents where if we had the ability to assess real property value, we'd kind of be in sync with that. And so I always feel the need to explain that tax because it's unique to oil and gas producing communities. So.
And I like it because, I will say even the previous boards that have been commissioners, they've worked really hard at keeping our property tax down. We want people to live here, and if we can figure out a way to keep it down and pay for the services and needs that the county needs without getting it out of the pocket of every landowner, we really work hard at that. I will say that's, since I've been on the board now, it's something we look at every year, like how that's, and this gross production tax has been I will say that's how it's been done. Because of the amount of traffic that we have out here, and it's not just the cars and the pickups that we have, it's the 105,005 trucks, or the 80,000. It's not just a drive by with a couple cars every once in a while. I look at the traffic, farmer and rancher, farming in different parts of the county, the traffic that drives by. Yeah, we haul grain and do our things too, but they're a constant. We're seasonal. And so what they obtain it's nice to be able to drive these roads. And I go a lot of places and am involved in other entities and get out. And when people come out here, that's one thing they do say. They say, man, your roads are enjoyable to drive. I got a family that comes from Fargo, Harwood. They said, we're not moving out here. We like it, but we would never move here because our traffic is cars, and they're just out of Fargo a little bit. He says, your traffic out here is 18-wheelers. He said, but you guys have really done a great job maintaining your roads. And like Erica brought up the water situation, and I know we'll get into it later, but that's been a push for us is, finally Homesteaders Gap, after how many years we were able to run water down to that area that people have never had. They've had water, but not good drinking water. And that's huge. There's areas that houses have developed north of town that there have rural water out there that the families aren't spending big bucks drilling a water well that might go bad. But we're not taxing people saying, hey, we want more money out of your pocket to do this. We're able to do it because of this gross production tax. And it's a big thing. And I'm very grateful to have that, to be able to provide services for the people in the county.
Yeah. Howdy and Eric are kind of dead on point there. The nice thing about, there's also, let's not forget, there's also an extra extraction tax. It's another 5% tax put on at the wellhead that goes straight into the state. We don't ever get to see that. So our little chunk is gross production tax. And one thing I'll kind of reiterate about what Howdy said is we do see a lot of 18-wheelers. We see a lot of ag traffic, but the difference between a semi and, say, a grain truck or a grain cart, big four-wheel drive tractor is PSI on your tires. A big old tire hauling that big piece of equipment actually puts less pounds per square foot or pounds per square inch on our road base than an 18-wheeler does. It's just because those nice big bias ply tires spread the weight out so far. So that's one thing to remember when we talk about especially our gravel roads. And the county does a great job keeping up our gravel roads. We got how many miles? Thousands of miles. We're the largest county in McKenzie County, so we got a lot of gravel. We got a lot of pavement, too. But the nice thing about gross production tax, especially for the city of Watford City, is, and it kind of falls back, too, into the property tax measure, which Watford City does like $1.8 million for property taxes. It's actually a very minute part of our budget. But it's the things that come with that $1.8 million. It's the essentially assessed properties and stuff. But we can get into that later. What I was going for was you flush your toilet in Watford City and we lose money on that water. we don't for a lot of our services. Our goal is to break even. We're a public utility. We're not here to make money. We're here to provide essential services, right? Water, sewer, garbage, the things you need to live, breathe, and hopefully have an enjoyable life. That's what we're here to do. We're not here to be profitable. The reason why we can keep our property taxes low and do what we do is because of the gross production tax. Now, not only does that help supplement our projects, but it also helps supplement things like water. When we brought rural water down from Williston, that was a extremely expensive project, and we knew that when we did that, we knew we weren't gonna be able to pass 100% of that billing on to the consumer right off the bat. We'd have a lot of very disappointed individuals within the city, and a lot of those guys have my phone number. So I don't need to. I don't really want to put up with that. But it's a pleasure to have gross production tax, which is something that up until recently we fought every 2 years to bring back to Watford City and McKenzie County. The amount the number one oil and gas producing county in North Dakota had to go to Bismarck every 2 years and pretty much beg, borrow, and steal anything they could get. Because one thing we have to remember is, and for especially those people listening, is we don't have the votes in Western North Dakota. Fargo has more than McKenzie County does. Actually, like 6 blocks surrounding the college has more votes in Bismarck than McKenzie County does. So that's one thing to remember. It's hard to do a budget. Everybody screams about transparency and why before this prairie dog passed, why our numbers were up and down. And it's because how do you budget for something that you don't know what you're going to get, right? So now that we have the prairie dog bill passed, we have a good solid formula where we have a much better idea on estimating. Of course, you can't estimate production really because it porpoises, it goes up and down. But with the gross production tax, being able to provide for McKenzie County and Watford City, what we wouldn't be able to pass on to the end user, it's been absolutely amazing. I can't imagine what our fees would be if we had to deal with this impact that we receive from the oil field if we didn't have this gross production tax, not to mention the benefit it does for our parks and our schools and our hospitals. If you just get out of us and you start talking about the school system, look at you said we'd run into each other in a school, a beautiful school that was built in the bottom of the oil market that was funded by gross production tax dollars. It's now our middle school, which is weird for me to say out loud, but that was a school built by the oil field. And and it just goes to show that as long as our city and our county government manage our funds wisely and our school, we can, when this leaves, because it will, right? Yeah. We've seen a couple booms just in our short lifetimes. There'll be another one, I'm sure, eventually. But when it dies, we got the money now. We can invest in the infrastructure, and we can. Otherwise, we don't want to go back to out-migration. My goal is to make a place where our kids can stay if they want to, where they would want to come back. I'd love for my daughter to go to college and come back to Watford City. I think it'd be pretty cool.
How about if we just lock them up and never let them leave?
No, they gotta get a good education.
Very
my daughter keeps telling me she's gonna put me in the nicest rest home her money can buy.
I think going back to Phil's
that might be
point,
right down the street here.
the water thing, I think that people need to realize that are listening is that line that comes across from Williston, it was valuable, right? And I will say we as commissioners pushed, and we finally are, I think by next year, we are putting another line across just in case something happens to that first line. We are not going to lose the water supply that is coming all the way down here to me. And we have designed that line, which cost a few dollars, that if that line ever failed, they can slide another pipe inside that line. So we could basically have, if things happen. And we worry about that. I mean, I know people don't think we do, but that's, I think, on the backside that we deal with in conversations with people around the state is like in the water. And it would affect if that line gets a hole in it. I mean, look at all the people that are out of water for how long? Yeah, they got them holding tanks, but if they don't catch it in time, they're contaminated. I mean, and just when Phil brought it up, it made me think of that we are putting another line in across that. Yeah, and it wasn't dealing with the core, dealing with projects. Everybody's like, well, hurry up and get things done. they don't understand the paperwork that we have to go through and the legalities and all that stuff to get to where we need to. And I mean, that's something I look at going, if that happens, we're going to have a backup line to be able to keep supplies coming to the residents of McKenzie County.
Double redundancy in a water supply is very important, especially when you look at it's not just McKenzie County that line serves. So, but yeah, it's a huge line. And people will drive around McKenzie County and see all these water tanks. If those are full, at one time I knew, what is that, like 5 days or 6 days worth of water? And that doesn't cover fire flow. So when we were running back and forth to every hydrant we could find because half of McKenzie County was on fire, we would have sucked those water tanks down in a hurry. That's where that double redundancy system that the county's planning is so visionary, and it's so important for pretty much everybody. And whether you're on rural water or not, it's important for the whole community, and that'll stretch beyond McKenzie County.
Well, and much like our mill levies vary, holding capacity really does too, because Western Area Water Supply, in partnership with McKenzie County, has put a lot of infrastructure investment into our holding capacity, but I do think it's at around four days right now. So there would be some time to repair, but to Howdy's point, that redundancy piece is crucial and vital, and it was definitely a weakness point in the system. And how much did the county contribute to that project? Was it $7.5 million?
So the project is we just got the permit to be able to start the work, so we really don't have a good estimate. I think the board's hoping to bid that project out here this winter yet. If I could, Vawnita, I just want to piggyback off of a term Phil mentioned here a little bit ago.
Yes, please do, because I had it noted too. What prairie dog is.
What prairie dog
let's
is.
talk about that so everybody knows what it is.
So as oil and gas producing counties, it was really important to us to make sure that we had a sustainable funding stream. So we get 30% of the gross production tax that comes back to the county and gets split between the cities and the schools and various other types of buckets. That 70% that goes to the state, part of that falls into a bucket for prairie dog funding, which is really how that oil and gas production tax is shared with the non-oil counties. So we just received word actually yesterday that the non-oil and gas producing counties will be receiving another distribution here. Either the bucket will fill either the end of this year or very early next year. So those other counties can also work on some of their improvement projects and capital needs that we have. So that was a really important part. It was called Operation Prairie Dog. It was spearheaded by Senator Rich Wardner out of the Dickinson area, who can talk on that for days. I think he could talk about Operation Prairie Dog, which is what he called it. But that bill really did help share that wealth of the gross production tax to other areas of the state, because we all realize that everyone has needs and impacts, but it really helps cement that the impacts that we're feeling here locally, that we can rely on that steady stream of funding into the future.
And hopefully. It doesn't sunset. So yeah, instead of having to go back every 2 years, it doesn't sunset. It doesn't expire, which I don't think a lot of people realize, that every 2 years, that the bill you'd pass was only good for that biennium. Then you'd have to go back again until we got Prairie Dog, so if you hear someone say it doesn't sunset, that's a pretty big deal for Western North Dakota.
And it was, I don't want to say it was controversial. It wasn't controversial, but it was compromised, because those communities in the formula gave up a little bit for that sustainability, and hub cities received a little more, but it was worth all of the reformulation to have that longer term sustainability in the formula.
I think people need to realize too, is I think I ended up speaking at some meetings and stuff down in Bismarck I was involved in. And it was amazing how many people outside of I call it the four areas, that didn't realize that what do we get that money for? I said, and I ended up getting in after doing a presentation on, I'll just say it, Measure 4, that I was against. So got called, had to go down to Bismarck and had to do some presenting over it. And I got visiting with a lot of the individuals down there that were from eastern part of the state, not, around that off of Bismarck. they didn't realize, some of them smaller communities did not realize that they were receiving money. They're like, we're actually receiving money? And I had some information with me. And I said, yeah, you received X dollars. And they're like, what? We really did? I don't think people realized what outlying counties are actually receiving, and they're not dealing with, I will say, when I first came in here, I had heartburn. Moving equipment around, couldn't stand it. But it came to where we got to work together. You know what I mean? And it's a good partnership. I mean, I think we've really mended a lot of fences with the oil companies and worked hard. And I mean, we'll get into what we've adjusted to build because they had some concerns. But I think people need to realize that we deal with it, but you get to reap the benefit of it with that prairie dog bill that is out there. And so if they're from areas that don't know it, go ask your commissioner, what are we receiving? Go find out your exact dollar amount that you're getting and look at that and say, oh, wow, that's why we're getting maybe this service that we didn't have, or why we're getting a piece of equipment that we didn't have or something. I don't know what they use with their funds for it, but I think they need to go ask and get involved and see what they're actually receiving from that prairie dog bill.
There's a very, very good report. It was commissioned, I think, in 2022, and it was the historic to-date redistribution of oil and gas tax revenue county by county. And Western Dakota Energy Association commissioned it. And if you go to Western Dakota Energy Association's website, Google it, pull it up, and you can get into their website and search for the 2022 oil and gas tax redistribution study, and you can actually see county by county where those dollars go. Interestingly enough, Cass County is the largest recipient of oil and gas taxes because so many of the formulas within the buckets that flow through are related to population and have a population element to them. And but that is a really, really good study because that helps people realize that our relationship with the energy industry benefits all of North Dakota in so many ways. Okay, really briefly, before we move on, because I definitely think we want to talk about projects. Here is what I have told people during the whole Measure 4 situation is if you had issues with your property taxes and you received your estimated statements and you didn't like those numbers, there's always a budget hearing process. And if you can't make the budget hearing process and those notices are mailed to you, I know locally here, our elected officials, your cell phones are listed on places where people can contact you, and the accessibility of our elected officials is very high and transparent here. Do you guys have anything to say to the public if they have an issue with something? How do you advise them to share their issue or their concern?
Call City Hall. Honestly, every year we have people come in that want to dispute their property taxes, which great, come on in. We'll have a wonderful discussion about it. But I'm going to bet that 99% of those discussions could have happened in the office at City Hall. They could have been settled right there, and they would have never come in front of City Council. I don't know if people are scared to call City Hall and ask the question, but they really shouldn't be. That office is for them. That office is there, and its sole purpose is to serve the general public. So make the phone call and ask the question. Honestly, 99% of everything we've ever dealt with at the city council level could have been handled in the office without having to come out of leaving your house after supper time to come to a special meeting just to find out you're there for 3 minutes on something that could have been handled over email.
We have our public hearing, and we sit there we sat there hour last year or this year. I mean, nobody was there, so we sat there. But I mean, I agree with Phil. I mean, call us, ask. I mean, like I said, I take a picture of mine, one of mine, because I get questions about it. And then I know when it was voted on by the county to increase for the school. Got calls. Why did my taxes? Hold on, time out. The county did, and I'm not picking on the school, but it was voted on by all the people to implement that on our property, to increase. I said, let's sit down. So I said, get your deal out. And I got my phone out and I had a picture of it and I went through it with them. And they looked at it and they're like, oh, you guys didn't do anything. And I think a lot of it is just call, ask, be polite, be courteous, because we don't know what's going on. I mean, that's why I tell people, to holler and scream and cuss and swear, it doesn't work out very well for anybody, because then the other side gets mad. But I always say, just call. Like, I mean, our phone numbers, and I know Erica or Katie. I mean, we've had a couple of meetings where Katie was there and people came in for the public, and they come in the door and they ask their question before they don't even stick around for the public meeting because their question got answered that fast. So make a phone call. I think that's the big thing. Just call somebody. Well, if I don't have an answer, I will direct you to somebody that will probably give you a better explanation than I can. And that's what I don't have any trouble saying. No, I don't have that answer. Let me call so-and-so and get the answer.
So what I hear is reach out, ask the question. You guys encourage the opportunity to visit with people, and probably much more productive than picking up the phone, yelling, screaming, being angry before knowing the answers, and or also just hitting social media and disrupting everybody's,
We have people we pay to do that. But that's
so like
to
disrupt people or
yeah,
no. Just kidding.
No, we have people that we actually pay for this at City Hall. That's their job, so you're not taking them away from anything. So call and ask the question. And there are several people that know that if you call me and yell at me, I'll hang up on you multiple times, because you don't have the authority to yell at me. I'm more than happy to have a conversation. But when you raise your voice, communication's shot. So there's one person in particular, and I'll tag him on this when it comes out, because he'll know exactly who I'm talking about.
And he's just praying right now. I hope he doesn't drop my name. I hope he doesn't drop my
I won't mention his name, but I'll definitely call him after this.
I will say I agree. I would wish they would call us before they go to the coffee shop. I'm not picking on the coffee shop, but before they start talking to other people and start getting their blood pressure raised up. Because I can tell you what, and I used to teach school, and it was always taught, ask the question, because I'll guarantee you somebody else has that same question, they just haven't asked it. And 9 times out of 10, if they call and ask, they're probably going to be with some of their friends or somebody else, and they're going to ask that same question, and they're going to be able to answer the question. And that's why I say, just call. Don't stew on it. Don't wait on it. Call any of us. Like Phil said, we have people that, Erica will talk about it too, we pay people that are way more, we look smart, but it's because of the team underneath us that helps me have this information and do what I do as a commissioner. I can't do it alone. We have a well-oiled team underneath employees that help us, and because we want to look good for everybody. We don't want to, get everybody a black eye. And so, Erica, I'm sure she gets more phone calls too. But that's what people need to realize. Just call and ask.
I didn't put this 36-page booklet together, but I can tell you who did.
I think that's one of the really great things, though, about living in the community that we live in, is that, we all went to the same high school. We all graduated within a few years of one another. And if I didn't know Howdy, I bet that I can run into somebody that does know Howdy and has his phone number, or be able to put me in touch with them to have those conversations. I wish more people would reach out and ask the questions, whether it's on property taxes or the value of your home and how that's determined, or even how elections work, and how you go about all of those things. I really wish people would get a little bit more engaged, so we can really help others understand what's going on at the county level, because nothing is a silo. These decisions are never made quickly. They're never made rashly. There's always a lot of thought and a lot of time that goes into, and a lot of information that goes into whatever's made. So please reach out, send me an email. If you can't get a hold of one of the board members, which I'm pretty sure they all answer their phone most of the day or night, send me an email, give me a call, and we can make sure to get you in contact with the person that can help you with your issue.
Unless they're in Spain splitting their toe open.
Yeah, that's right.
That's true.
I will mention she brought up elections. For transparency of our elections, McKenzie County does a great job keeping our elections safe. All of our equipment's air gapped. It's not connected to the internet. It doesn't have a Wi-Fi router built into the thing that counts your votes. So just before you go on Facebook and start talking about how crooked everything is, maybe that's a good question to ask too, because McKenzie County's elections are wonderfully transparent. It's not the same that goes on in other states or countries around the state. We don't or around the country. The way we do it's really, really square. Erica puts on a heck of a good election, and it's one of the safest elections, I think. It's got to be one of the best ones around North Dakota because everything's air gapped. You know, you can't. There's no digital transfer of information over. You know, nothing's cloud based. So
Well, Erica's offered, and I put her on the spot in a meeting at times, and she smiles at me, and she's good about it. I
Under the table.
Well, I'm good. I'm a couple cheers away, so Joel gets the kick
Save.
before I do. But no, we've had an open discussion about how our election is ran, and I mean, I don't know, at one meeting, 10, 15 minutes, we talked about it. She went from start to finish, and people are welcome to come in and watch, and because they do tests. And I was in there, and I've heard it before. So I was in there one day, and you were running a test or something, and I went over to the machine, and it was like, okay. I mean, it's not just go and do it. She's got codes, and I mean, it's not just like fly by night. Somebody can go do it. I mean, it's very detailed. I think it's ran very well, very safe, and like Phil said, it's hooked to this. No, it's not. You know, I mean, things are coded and sealed, and be matching numbers. I mean, it's quite a process. And if you got questions, I can tell you what, Erica will answer them, and she'll convince you that it's safe. It is. It's one of the safest ones. I can't get over it. I mean, to hear it and go through it is, I give her and her staff that do it and all the volunteers that help during them days are phenomenal.
Yeah.
I will say that.
Well, and I actually, because we're just coming off of, a week ago, I had it kind of as the close to thank election officials, but maybe we should.
Sorry.
I mean, gee whiz, guys, come on now. But maybe we should just talk about it briefly now because Eric, I have served on a canvassing board before, and we all think we know the day the ballots come out and they're available to the public. And so for us, it feels like election day is 45 days. For you, it's continuous because you're constantly getting ready for the next. But it was so funny on the day of election day, Facebook, Watford City What's Up was just blowing up. Like, where do I vote? What do I need for all the things? Can you just super briefly, talk about set-aside ballots? Because I feel like 90% of the questions being asked that day, those situations were going to end up as set-aside, and just how secure, truly, the state is, but the integrity that you take in the election process. I know that you want every person's vote counted that legally should be counted, and so do just take a little bit of time
Sure.
to talk about that.
So elections are my very favorite topic. I really enjoy talking about elections, talking about the process, and I would be remiss if I didn't, first of all, say a huge thank you to our Secretary of State, Michael Howe, and the State Elections Director, Erica White. The information and the communication that has come out from that office since Michael has taken over the reins there has been phenomenal. And what the first thing I will say is that there are 50 different states and there are 50 different state laws that govern elections. North Dakota is unique in many aspects where we don't require voter registration, where everyone uses the same equipment. We all follow the same processes. So it works. In my opinion, it's the best way to do it. But it is also the system that I know. So there are a few qualifications that every single person that casts a ballot has to have when they show up at the polls. And we ask you these questions. If you were in person, you heard these questions, regardless of how ridiculous that they are. Are you a U.S. citizen? Are you at least 18 years old? And have you lived here for at least 30 days? Those all have to be yeses. It doesn't matter, like I said, if it's my husband, if you're very clearly over the age of 18, everyone gets asked those because it's very important to me that every single person that walks in the door is treated exactly the same. Also, to vote, you have to bring with you one form of valid identification. And there are 4 different forms that we accept in the state of North Dakota. The first one that 95% of people use is their state driver's license, a North Dakota driver's license. If you don't have one of those, you can get a non-driver's ID card from the state of North Dakota. For our folks that are living in long-term or assisted care facilities, there's a long-term care certificate that can be used as a form of identification. Or for our tribal citizens, they can use a tribal ID. All of those have to be North Dakota issued. And so if you walk in the polls and you have an out-of-state ID, that is not one of our valid forms of identification. You can't supplement that with a utility bill or anything else. So for those folks that come in and maybe they can't get in to get their driver's license updated, maybe, sometimes those appointments are really hard to come by and you can't get in until after election day. Well, that's okay. You can come in and you can fill out a form, an envelope with one of the election judges where we'll take your information. You can vote a ballot, the same ballot that everyone else receives on election day. The only difference is that you are now voting a set aside. You can think of that as a provisional type of ballot where that ballot doesn't get counted on election night. But you have 13 days after election day to come in and prove to me that you are a qualified elector, that you have the valid identification, that you are a U.S. citizen. We saw a few folks that voted set aside because they didn't have their ID updated to remove their maybe New American. They needed to remove some endorsements off of their piece of plastic driver's license. So all of those things happen. So after election day, if you vote set aside, and we had 46 of them, a couple of weeks ago, 46 set-aside voters, you can come into my office, prove who you are, and at the Canvas Board meeting, which meets 13 days following the election, if you come in and verify who you are, we will open your ballot and we will tabulate it with the remainder of the results and add it to the totals. So we've had 5 people so far come in and validate those, but if you forget your ID at home and it's 6:55 and you can't return home and get it, you can come in and vote set aside. If you have an out-of-state ID and you're planning to get a North Dakota one, you can vote set aside. If you're a New American who hasn't updated your ID, you can vote set aside. If you've moved but you forgot to bring with you or couldn't access a bank statement or a utility bill, you can vote set aside. It's very important to me that everyone who is eligible to vote and legally authorized to has that opportunity. So we never turn anyone away from voting at the polls. It's always the voter's choice of if they want to vote set aside or return and get with the appropriate documentation and ID that they need.
So some of those Watford City WhatsApp conversations probably were set aside, but I need to know that you did have that many. So excellent. Well, thank you, and thank you to everybody listening who volunteers on Election Day and serves as a poll worker. And thank you, Erica, for always having an organized and efficient process to vote. It's so easy, and I look at some of the lines you see on the news and think, oh.
I'm so fortunate to have the election workers that we have here in McKenzie County. They were a great team, and they do a great job at the polls.
Excellent. Awesome. Okay, so let's move on to the question that has been something that I really want to talk about. And so Daniel Stenberg, who's not with us today, but he's a co-host on the show. And when he and I are in different circles in the work that we do, which is economic development, community development, people always ask us, and I suspect you guys get the same kind of questions, how do you get things done in McKenzie County? How do you get projects done? Because we have communities we're aware of, and somebody wants a hockey rink, but they can't come together and get all the cats herded into a group that this is what we need as a community facility and collaboratively work together. So can we just talk a little bit about how we get things done in this community?
I think we have a long-standing history of collaboration, of knowing that not one single entity can do all of the things that we need. And so we've come up with some very creative, some very unique ways. And I think that partnership has really followed us as long as I've been alive, really into what it is today. So I think the community is really good at identifying what those needs are. And then we get everyone sitting at the table and figuring out, okay, how can we get this accomplished? Who's going to help fund it? Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to operate it? And it really is that. And part of that is feedback from our constituents, from those that live here, about what they want to see as well. And knowing that all of those things cost money to operate and build and service and maintain so that we can have that continuum. But I think the community, all of the different elected boards have really done a great job of, hey, let's talk about it. This isn't a us versus you. This is a we community, and it's really important that everyone has a voice at the table and we get the things done that are needed.
You bet. It's been working with Howdy and the commissioners as a member of the city council has always been it's always been relatively easy. I've known Howdy pretty much my entire life, so I might be a little bit more brash with him than I would be to Heisted or well, I'd tell Wold the same thing I tell you, but you know it's we have such a great working relationship together, and I think it's because everybody understands it's not Watford City for Watford City or McKenzie County for McKenzie County. We're all here as a community and we're working towards the same best interests of our future generations. And that doesn't always mean just McKenzie County. That means the work that the county has done in Williams County too. You know, the money just doesn't stay in McKenzie County because our ambulance doesn't service 100% of McKenzie County, you know. So, but it's those working relationships we have between the local political subdivisions and the local counties. It actually, you know, I think we do a good enough job where I can honestly sit down and say comfortably that the work we do here together benefits all of Western North Dakota. It benefits North Dakota as a whole, but we see a little bit more direct about it because I've never been told no right away when I make a request. You know, some of them might be a little outlandish, but you know, but reach for the stars and just take the ceiling with you when you go. So
I think a lot of it people don't realize is it's that they come and watch a meeting and they think, oh, how long? They probably don't realize the hours that was spent meeting and conversating with the other side. Like, you know, I know we've decided on or had discussions where we can't have a quorum of commissioners, so we send one or two, but we'll meet many times before something is ever brought to the table. Because I like to have, me as a commissioner, I guess, how much can we work through? How many issues or what's a solution to come to an agreement? How many, you know, because, and I think a big part of it is, I don't think I've ever left a meeting where I wanted to choke on somebody else. I mean, we can be frank, like Phil said, we can be brass, but we realize we're adults. That's how it is. We're not going to always agree. We're going to say something that might offend you, but after that deal, it's over. I'd say we come back the next day or whatever and meet again. It's part of, I guess I call it being an adult. You're going to have them conversations. You're not always going to agree, but if we don't agree, but we come to an agreement, I didn't get what I wanted, they didn't get what they want, but we come to an agreement, I can't come out and say they ripped us off or we ripped them off. We made an agreement.
good compromise.
Yeah, but I think communicating is what has caused this to work together. It's just working together, talking, visiting.
And I don't. Maybe the general public does understand, but you go to a city council meeting or you go to a county commission meeting, and there might not be as much discussion on a certain topic that you thought there should be, but there may have already been 2 committee meetings about that exact topic. So county commissioners and city council members also have a litany of other committees that they're on. So, you know, streets, walks and lights or building committee or library committee or, you know, so what you see at the city council or county commission meeting isn't 100% of the conversation, but all those meetings are posted and they're all open to the public. So I don't know how many times I have to tell people that they're all posted and they're all open to the public, and they're posted in public spots like City Hall, you know. So if there's something that you're really passionate about, you can call or stop by because all those meetings are open to the public. So,
And actually, in City Hall, they're right in the vestibule when you walk in where you drop your utility payments. So you don't even have to go all the way in, just in the first set of doors, and you can access them there. Because we have people that are new to the community, and maybe the Rough Rider Center was already here when they got here. Maybe the Law Enforcement Center was already here when they got here. Maybe the County Public Works Building was already here when they got here. But I think all of those facilities are examples of collaboration. I think the Rough Riders probably one of my favorite collaboration stories, because when you look at it, the Stenberg family donated the land. The county came in and did a lot of the dirt work and mass grading to prepare the site. The school district knew that they had limited bonding ability to be able to build the high school, so they built the high school building proper and own a small, footprint around that building. And then the city came in and pledged future gross production tax and future sales tax to bond for the football field, the track, the softball field, the Rough Rider Center itself. And the Rough Rider Center itself, the major users to that are the high school is the primary major user under contract with the facility, but you also have the hockey club, the figure skating club, the swim team club, the gymnastics club. And instead of all of those entities going and trying to figure out how to capital fundraise to build their own spaces because they were all growing, all of those things centralized under one roof. And then the Watford City Park District operates and runs the facility. So we can go, I look at our law enforcement center, Phil, in preparation of today, I pulled up our certificate of levies. And one of the lines that we levy for is the annual lease payment to the law enforcement center because the PD they were homeless. They had completely outgrown the space in City Hall. If the city went and built their own, police department, it just would have cost the taxpayers so much more. So thank you guys for the cooperation in that building and that space as well. And I have a whole list of them, but I just think it represents who our community is, the partnerships. We actually had a ribbon cutting just this week for the Wolf Pup at Fox Hills. Does anybody want to talk about that project at all?
I will. I think that came about. That's part, I think, that working relationship with, like the city, but also with the oil industry. I mean, they want to bring families in. I mean, they did. But not all the wives wanted to stay. I mean, they got kids. Someone to go do something. What are we going to do? We don't have waiting list a mile long for the other one. And that was, that was started prior to me. They'd already been a commissioner. You guys they'd done some dirt work stuff, or what, I don't even know the correct term.
Site studies,
planning, site grading. Yeah,
okay.
that was.
And they'd done a lot of that and did all that. So that was priorly done. And then it came to her like, hey, we got to list this long. And I think that came into where we as a county really realized it. And so to start that project, we bought some portable units, which we still have out there. But we built them to try to alleviate some of that pressure. And now they're up and running, which now we're still using some of them portable units for their preschool because Tessa had come in and said, hey, instead of trucking, because they're outgrowing that preschool right across from City Hall to the east there, they're using part of that because they can just walk over there and use that as preschool. So I think that's part of it is, we were able to have the finances but we didn't raise taxes. We were able to use the fundings that we're getting from the gross production tax and that stuff to help make our community strong and do it. And that's part of that deal. Could always go back to that measure 4. We're not raising taxes, but we're using the money to help the community grow, make the community stable for the young people to say, hey, I think that was a driving force to get some of these young couples and young people to come back. Now I have daycare because they want kids. They want to do something. Well, they're both working. Well, so they go have a great daycare now. They only have 2 of them, and it was good to have it be open. I mean,
Yeah. So I know we were lucky enough when we moved back to Watford City and we started having kids of our own, my lovely wife and I. Did you like that?
Poor Debbie.
But there were a few, half a dozen in-home daycares. That's what was available. And then we got Wiggles and Giggles. And we got to get both my kids into Wiggles and Giggles, which was amazing. The nice thing about Wiggles and Giggles, which is now Wolf Pup Daycare, is I always refer to it as an institutional daycare. Before that, 1 week of my vacation was always the same week that our daycare lady took. As it turns out, people doing in-home daycares are gradually diminishing throughout the United States. It's not a profitable venture, so there's not a lot of people to do it. We really were concerned when we were talking about Wolf Pup 1 that, and I'm a firm believer that the government should never go into competition with private industry unless there is no one to fill that gap. And we heard from everybody, yeah, you know what, I'd love to move to Watford City, but where are my kids going to go? I don't have daycare. We've really become a community of dual income households. It's Not like when your grandma and grandpa were growing up, when your grandma stayed home and made supper and did the laundry, and your grandpa went out and hoed in the field, or he went and did a business. We have, dual income households is a real thing, and it's a predominant pusher in one of the predominant pushers in our economy. So we have to take care of what has now become an essential service, just as important as water, sewer, garbage, but we have to look at childcare. And we really saw a huge issue with that. We opened up Wolf Pup, and it was good for a couple years, and then there was a waiting list. But Watford City's good at that. We put an addition on our grade school that was too small before it opened. We've done. If you really want to look to see, you go out by the airport and look at the Public Works building and the police department, and just remember all of that was in the courthouse up on top of the hill, and it was 2/3 the size. They put a big addition on that was too small before they opened it. So no, daycare was a unbelievable addition to wonderful Watford City and McKenzie County as a whole, because we have people coming into town to drop their kids off. Now Alexander is going to get a daycare, which is so terribly badly needed in Alexander too, and that's where the county stepped up, and they're kind of helping everybody out and spreading the wealth, because like I said before, we're a huge community. So yeah, but daycare that's just as important to most families as garbage service or water service. So,
and to go spin off Phil's comment about the Alexander one, we just didn't do it to say, okay, we're annoyed with what's going on in Watford. I mean, seriously, you'd think we're trying to compete with them. We're not. We're trying to help them out, because there's families that work over there that they drive their kids over here. Well, now they're able to drop their kids off, will drop their kids off. Well, their husband might work in Wollaston. Well, that husband can pick the kids up versus, it wasn't just that we're like, oh, we're just going to do this because we're going to compete. It wasn't that. The community's growing. Alexander's growing. They have a lot of young kids over there. Their school's growing. Things are growing. It's just another service. Yeah, it's not sitting in Watford City. And that's what people got to realize. If you talk about the county, we're a huge county. And that's one thing I stress. Everybody's like, well, no, we're not doing it here. We look at, okay, let's look at Alexander. Let's look at Arnegard. There's things we've done in other counties. And that was part of it when the discussion came up about Alexander. It's like, yeah, okay. They came in with a plan, and we're like, okay, yeah, we think we can contribute some way. So.
And that's awesome, because that helps. That's such a big part of being a community leaders, is that daycare in Alexander is going to be awesome. It's going to be it's going to take a big load off. Hopefully it takes enough of a load off where we can actually take a breath before we have to start talking about building a preschool or another grade school,
I actually I had a note here on the list of all the collaborative facilities, and Aaron Weber is the city attorney for Alexander, and him and I have been sharing some documents back and forth, and he's been asking for input on their RFP process and that kind of thing. And I emailed him back the other day, and I said, you guys need to hurry up and name that thing, because we've named it here. And I said, we're calling it the Smart Alex Academy. And he's like, oh, wait.
That's awesome.
But the point I was going to make is that the funds being used to go vertical with these daycare centers are the gross production tax that the industry pays. And I've always been very appreciative of our elected boards being sensitive and balancing what the industry wants their tax to go towards, and also balancing just those needs that are coming from all different corners of the community. So that daycare center in Alec is going to be a game changer, because like you said, Howdy, there, Williston has a hub of capacity and Watford has a hub of capacity, but we know that so many people go back and forth between these two communities that Alexander is poised and has the opportunity to grow. And like Phil said, to take the pressure off of, Watford, as Alexander flourishes, so does the county, and so do the communities within the county, to have that great corridor with services through. Alexander's also expanding their school right now. And so I did want to talk a little bit on that, because I'm not going to lie. I hear things once in a while and people are like, is this true? And so somebody from Alexander called and said, how much are our property taxes going to come up? And we're in their 4-H club over in Alexander. And so we go over to Ragged Butte 4-H club. And somebody said, how much are our property? We're building a school and we're building a daycare. And I said, well, I don't know, but I suspect not much, because I think a good portion of your school is being paid for through Bankhead Jones funding, and the county is, doing the daycare project. So I don't know the answer. You should call the auditor, but that's my suspicion. So we haven't talked about this yet. Can you talk about, on a county level, how you redistribute back into our school districts in the county?
Sure. So the primary funding stream that we use for getting funding to our schools is through what we typically refer to as Bankhead Jones dollars. So this goes back, this is a federal law that was passed in like 1937. The money is 25% of the fees and receipts received from Forest Service lands. McKenzie County is a huge amount of federal and state-owned land, and being an oil county, we do get a significant payment from the federal government for the oil and gas activity that happens on the national grasslands. So if you hear somebody say Bankhead Jones, that's the funding stream. It's money from the federal government for what they receive off of the federal lands within McKenzie County. Those dollars have varied over the years. When we've been low in oil production, we haven't gotten a lot. The last few years, it's been a substantial revenue stream, but those monies are really restricted. There's two things that they can be used for: roads and schools, and that's it. And so Bankhead Jones are also one source of revenue that isn't part of the school funding formula. School funding formula, extremely complex. If you want to know how that works, talk to Steve Holen. I don't understand that funding, but there's a whole bunch of things that get deducted that affect their per pupil payment. What we found out over the years is that Bankhead Jones is not one of those. So the county is able to distribute Bankhead Jones dollars to our school districts without them being penalized in their per pupil and other payments that they receive from the state. So the commission for a number of years has really used that as a great mechanism to distribute some dollars. For example, this year we received about $23 million in Bankhead Jones from the prior year's receipts that were received. And the board has very graciously over the last number of years either taken a very small percentage of that and kept it for our own needs and our roads because we have other dollars that are available. But what they've really done is they've distributed those dollars, most of those dollars, some or all of those dollars sometimes to the school districts to help them really not have to levy their citizens those property taxes. So $10 million wasn't unheard of to go to McKenzie County School 1 for the last couple of years. The same with Alexander School District. They've received some very nice contributions from the county, graciously from the county, really so that they can have these building projects. Also are small. I mean, a lot of people maybe don't know we have a one-room schoolhouse that still operates here in McKenzie County. The commission has used Bankhead Jones dollars to help them with a playground and another building where they can have gym outside in the winter when it's cold. They've assisted Earl School District down in Homesteaders Gap with various projects and needs they have down there. So, I mean, it's not isolated just to McKenzie County 1 or Alexander School District number 2. It's really looking whole. Yellowstone School District is another one over in East Fairview where the board gave them money so that they didn't have to levy taxes. They could build a new kitchen and some additions on their school. I mean, much needed. That's right in that money all goes right back into the pockets of the citizens who live in those areas because those projects are all being funded by these dollars we're receiving from the federal government. I pulled one statistic here over the last, since 2017 to 2024, the schools have received over $65 million in Bankhead Jones alone from the county. And
I bet that keeps their mill levy down.
Well,
that's so rewarding. I'll be honest, being involved in that, like the one that sticks out really is Yellowstone over there. We went over there, and I mean, what the thing is people got to realize they come in and ask. They're going to get something, but we still make every school that wants something come in and present. And the thing is they going to use it for what they say they're going to use it for. But being involved in the East Fairview School, going over there prior to them before they asked and seeing what they had, and then going over there after it was done. The teachers, the whole morale of that building changed. I can say that because I was there when they were just what they were, and then the add-on of the kitchen, and it's just amazing. And the extra classroom, the things that they were able to do, the superintendent, everything's just changed because it's like they're not sitting on top of each other, and helping the schools out. That's our future. I'm nice that we have that money to say, hey, what can we do to, where can we, who wants what, and they don't get, the great thing is they don't get punished for it, where, usually you get something and, now we're going to hurt you over on this side.
When Dr. Holland starts talking about imputation, I'm go like this. But yes,
Same.
not imputed. As a side note, Howdy, my niece actually goes to East Fairview, and when that ribbon cutting happened, she was hopped up and talking about that. The kids were so excited that was a great investment in that side of the county who isn't in the heart of the development. So I think they definitely sometimes feel left out, and probably sometimes are left out or were in the past when there weren't resources to cover everything that was on the list. So I do have, one of the things, another one of the projects, the county has done such a great job of getting the funding redistributed. Childcare, we're going to more than double our licensed capacity in the community. The Rough Rider Fund has a grant program for licensed childcare renewal, and we just are proposing to double that budget or that pool of money because our licensed spots are doubling next year when Smart Alex opens up. Get that thing named, Darren.
I bet they come up with the names.
Real soon.
I'm going to call Lance and bring it up.
Yeah.
But let's just talk real briefly about the Bakken Area Skills Center because the county participated in that too. And I think in the world that Daniel and I work in, we see outside resources, and most of the time those outside resources that are available require a local resource match. Eric, you maybe know the funding of that building. I would be off by $2, $3, $4, $5 million probably. But can you guys talk about the Bakken Area Skills Center, the county's participation in that, and really what that is going to mean for the future of workforce in our area, our skilled and technical workforce?
So I'll just kick it off and say that, a lot of the projects that we've talked about today, the daycare, the housing, we haven't talked about the housing programs that the city and the counties, the cities, I shouldn't say just Watford City, but the cities have really had, and the county has had. But all of these really are workforce development issues. And one of the things that community leaders have heard from the industry is that we just can't recruit people here. We don't have houses for them. People don't want to live in apartments, and we want them to bring their families. So we need all of these different things. And so the idea kind of came forward to really start growing our own sort of and training our own people here. I think we are all products of having been raised here and either moved away and came back or stayed here. And so those are the people that we're having the most success with, is people that we can get to come here and stay here. And so the focus has really been on working on building that workforce locally. And so the county did contribute, I believe, $5 million to the Bakken Area Skills Center project, which was at that point in time about half what they needed to in order to get some of the funding from the state. So I'll kick it over to you guys to talk more about what else that project means here.
I'll be honest. When it first came up, I was kind of like, not really for it. I was thinking like, why? What do we, maybe old school. What do? You go away, you go to college, everything, right? Well, then I thought, started visiting and talking to the kids and realized, not everybody is designed to go to a 4-year school or even a 2-year school. They're just, some people, they're glad to get out of school. They're glad to get rid of paperwork, but let them do something with their hands, they're going to knock it out of the park. So after visiting and realizing it, and then going forward with the project, and now touring this, been up there a few times, visiting with the kids that are doing the projects. I mean, I sit back, well, age myself here, Vawnita. I'm aging you because you're the same age as me. But
Way to bring that
yeah,
up.
I had to. Just so everybody
I
understands.
got my hair colored
I see
yesterday.
that.
I'm just saying.
I did too. Mine's naturally. So, but long story short, I looked at their facilities that they have, the technology. I remember in Boyd class, they passed around the laser for so many weeks. And
The lathe.
the lathe, all that. We had four
The
machines.
core of discovery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
4 machines would come around, and they were only there for, was it 6 weeks? 4 weeks? It wasn't very long, and then they were gone. Well, you just got your feet wet. No, these kids are. I was out there, and one of the kids I ended up visiting with was Signer, Jake. And man, he was working on something, and so he was on a tour day, or we were doing newest stuff. And my kid's youngest was out there, and he helped him weld for the first time. And just the things that's leading these kids that might not want to go to a 4-year school and be able to have the oil companies or the industry here saying, hey, we'll educate you. Then guess what? When you're done, you already have a job. You know how nice that was when I went to school to be a teacher, you had to go interview. These guys are like, hey, we're going to train you. When you get done with your training, here's a job. You're going to receive a paycheck, but you're not going to have this horrendous debt that how many kids go to college and come out with a degree that they're like, why did I do that? I don't like it. So I think the community growth, the houses and stuff. I mean, yeah, they might stay here, live with mom and dad for a while, but maybe mom and dad will say, hey, they might want to build a house. Well, it's just going to keep the community growing. I mean, we used to have an older community, and now look, we're kind of trending more to the younger side of the community. So I think the door and the opportunity that building is going to create, I think the sky's the limit on it for what I feel personally on that building and what it's done for the youth in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the oil industry not my entire life, 25 years now. But Howdy's right. I left town to go to college, where I was lucky enough to meet my lovely wife. And then we ended up in Denver, Colorado, and we made the conscious decision to move back to Watford City. And that's when I started in the oil industry. And that's one thing we've always been short of in Watford City, skilled labor. And when I talk about skilled labor, I just don't mean guys that lift heavy stuff and pump wells and do the roustabout work. I'm talking about electricians, plumbers, carpenters, that type of skilled labor. Anyone that owns a home and has to do that maintenance that comes with getting a plumber and electrician, man, that's difficult. That's really tough to do. Getting a carpenter to come in and do your work and not have to schedule it out 6 months, extremely difficult. Getting an electrician to wire in some outlets, or to come out to a company like One Oak, go to work for them, and then learn their system. That's very difficult to do. One thing we found is in the industry is the people that moved here, they're here. Now we're gonna get some more. We can do we can do some transfers, we can do some recruiting. But for the majority, we got the most of the people here that we're gonna get. That's just kind of a quiet understanding. We can do some recruitment. We can bring some more people in, but we're not going to get them in droves like we did before. When this first hit, the whole country was shutting down. Mm-hmm. The joke used to be, I was the last one out of Idaho. I had to shut the lights off when I left. And a lot of those guys have moved back, but now that we don't have that mass influx of individuals, we have to find a way to continue these services because we are all getting older. It happens every year, unfortunately. And we have to replace this aging workforce. And that skilled labor, when they leave, it's tough to get them back. And Howdy was dead on the money when he said some people don't want to leave. If their goal is to go into the oil field, make $100,000 as a 20-year-old kid, and all he has to do is use a project that we already have set up, the Bakken Area Skills Center, which is amazing. And one thing I want to bring up, it also has a medical in there that my lovely daughter has got to participate in that through Julie Dragseth, who we all went to school with, which is great for her because that's her plan when she graduates from high school. She's going to go into the medical field, And whenever we go in and we talk to these colleges, that's the first thing the college brings up. Have you taken that medical careers class through the Bakken Area Skills Center? And we can happily say, yes, we have. You know, it's a huge benefit for the community, and some people don't understand what it's going to do for us. Maybe not today and maybe not tomorrow, but in a week from now, a year from now, and a decade from now, what kind of benefit we're going to directly see. We're gonna be able to hold it in our hand and look at it. It's not gonna be, yeah, that should work. It's gonna work. It really doesn't have any other choice, just because of the people that we have hired to run the programs, the people we have hired to run the building. You know, the collaborative effort we have from the local. It's not just Watford City, the local communities that are gonna come down and use the Basque is really wonderful. And it's like I said, that's not just a McKenzie County or a Watford City thing. That's a Western North Dakota benefit. So
The thing that I have found so interesting, I agree with everything. All your observations sync with what our observations, Daniel, and my observations have been working closely with that team. But I say it kind of tongue in cheek, but I think this is actually our opportunity to grow our way out of our housing crisis, because you have Mr. Michael, you know, Dr. Heckeman and Mr. Wisness have found very, very good CTE instructors. You have Mr. Michael in construction trades. I can't remember the welding instructor's name, but met him the other day when we were going through a tour, and he's energetic and he's got kids, you know, welding pipe and preparing them for industrial welding. And he's going to be offering them 2 levels of certificates. And he was talking to our group, which is actually the Stockmen's Association that went through the Bakken Area Skills Center. And he said if they get the level 1 certificate, they enter the workforce at $150,000 a year. If they get their level 2 certificate in a very short time, they can be up to $300,000 a year welding. Of course, you're welding out in the winter half the year, but still incredible.
standing on your head in a puddle of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're working on finding their automotive instructor still. You
Yep.
talked about Ms. Dragseth, and then Mr. Johnsrud, Erica's brother.
Yep.
Justin is over in automation, and you go in and you see the skills that these kids are stacking and preparing for an accelerated entrance to the workforce. But very, very quality skills, quality careers that they're going to be pathwaying into. And so, yes, this probably leads us into our one of our last topics that I had noted here. And I always try not to put too much pressure on Mr. Michael, but I say we got to build our way out of this housing crisis. And so he has his construction trades pathway full of students engaged in all of the aspects from framing to HVAC to electrical. And he said he's probably 3 to 4 years away from being able to start to send out those fully prepared construction tradesmen. But can we spend a little time talking about housing before we do a last minute who wants to hit one topic? So the governor's office just released a report and recommendation that he'll be bringing through his executive budget to the legislative session, identifying a need for $96 million in a handful of housing programs. What I can say is out in our area, we've been in a housing shortage for 15 years, probably 12 to 15 years. As our exploration workforce, who was satisfied with man camp type living, has transitioned into operational workforce who brings their families, and we want their families here, and we have the livability to recruit those families here. But we've been working on housing for, 6, 7, 8 years.
I would say as long as Howdy's been on the board, we've been talking about
I don't
housing.
know that I've ever talked about anything else.
Yeah, I lost count.
Anyway, so we know we have a Job Service North Dakota study that a report they prepared several years ago by region, and somehow by 2030 we have Saralon coming. We have some other very innovative businesses coming to our area for the nexus and intersection of ag and energy. And we know that we have to find room for another 10,000 workers above what we have right now. without saying it, housing is really frustrating and really, really hard. But what do you guys think? Is this something that we can figure out, and can we, layer in these opportunities that we hope come from state level funding?
We don't have a choice. Can we figure it out? Absolutely. Will we? Absolutely. Will it be easy? Not at all. We could have you could put 150 homes in McKenzie County right now, and they'd be full tomorrow. The only thing we have to overcome is the cost, right? And it doesn't matter where you are. The cost to build a home right now is high. Everybody's always heard of the Bakken surcharge. It's not just in lumber. It's in everything we bring in. And then we just talked about the shortage of employees that actually build homes. And then we can always talk about interest rates, which will hopefully start coming down. But that's the big issue we run into right now. And I know it's been beat to death, but you can't expect a guy to sell his house, move to McKenzie County, move it into an apartment because he got a great job, and expect him and his wife and his kids to be happy in a 980 square foot apartment when they left 2,400 square feet behind with a big backyard. So housing is an absolute need. It's just as important as it's just as important as water, sewer, garbage, and healthcare and childcare. Now, it's we're either gonna stop growing or we're gonna have to do something about housing, and that's where the county has been doing some great work in the last few years with help from the city, and now I'm glad to see Governor Burgum stepping in to really analyze, because we've been talking about this isn't a regional issue, this is a statewide issue. Mm-hmm. So hopefully now we can get some traction and get something done. You pour cement in Watford City and it's sold before that cement cures, but getting it to a price where average Joe public can go out and purchase a home. I bought my home in 2002, so it was drastically cheaper there. We were still suffering from out-migration, So, yeah, absolutely, we need to do something. And we've talked about it at length. And I don't know how many, is this our third program? Fourth, fifth? What program are we on now?
Well, we had the subsidy down payment program. We had the shovel-ready lot program for urban and rural lots. We had the construction builder participation program, and the county just recently funded within the last, was that 6 months ago?
Yeah,
the Watford City Housing Authority pathway to purchase program. So we're at least four of them. But then in the initial years of the boom time, we're past that now, the boom time, but I remember the county getting into and purchasing and leasing single-wide trailers for county employee housing. And then that transitioned into city, county, school district participation in Wolf Run Village, which is 64 units of condos and apartments for essential workforce. We had the hospital in earlier this week, and Pete Edis talked about, I think there are over 70 units of housing for the hospital, and they're in critical shortage now and trying to figure out how to recruit more employees to the healthcare system here that are hitting housing barriers. So they're struggling right now a little bit too, but man, it's a difficult nut to crack. And by this $96 million, yes, it's statewide. I still challenge, our community to be the one that figures it out first, because and I feel like we've been through a lot of the learning processes and learning curves. But I was excited by the dollar amount, just under $100 million. And one of the specific programs in there was for urban construction, or rural communities construction. So they're identifying urban overpopulation and then underpopulation. We fall in the rural, but focusing on shovel-ready lots, I don't want to call them, that's our term, buildable lots. Mm-hmm. And so we're actually, the city right now, when we saw the report, is putting an assessment and inventory together of our build-ready lots. And I think the county, Sandy has that as well. So
I think the biggest, are we going to do it? Yeah, we're going to do what we can. I think the nail on the head that Phil said is the price, is getting that house, the price of that house for people to afford to live in and buy it and purchase it. I think that's, I look back when building buildings on the farm, priced one out just because just to see what they've done. 4 years ago, built one, priced the same one out, twin to what it was, and it's almost double the triple price for what reason? Just because they can, and they know we need them, so they do what they do. I mean, that's the price margin is what the key is. I think, can we come up with something? Yeah. Like the programs we've worked together with the city on, it wasn't all roses at first. I mean, you know that. I mean, everybody knows that they've seen some of the, but then it was that, okay, let's go sit down and visit and talk together, and we came to a solution. I mean, it's what it is. We're going to work together. We're going to figure out a way. It's just not going to happen overnight. But I agree with you, Vawnita. We've done enough, I think, to where we're going to be able to step above and be ready to roll with something like this program that Governor Berg, you know what I mean? We've done some programs, and I think now we just got to get serious and figure out something to get, back in there with it.
It's going to be a little easier for and I just say this a little tongue in cheek. It'll be a little easier for the city because we have lots that have water sewer sewer utility to the curb, where that's going to be a little bit more difficult in rural areas because we had one time looked at country living and drilling a well and getting REC to bring power to a man alive, and hoping your well comes back good.
Yeah.
Where that's the one thing about like Arnegard, Alexander, Watford City, portions of Fairview, other communities that have infrastructure already in the ground. That's going to be a little easier spot for expansion. But that's really where so much expense comes into play. This program was based on a couple meetings. The last meeting we had was in Williston. Stenberg came up, and we brought a bunch of community members from the surrounding, from pretty much western North Dakota. And his big question was, what's preventing us from building homes? And if you can get past, we don't have the carpenters, we don't have the wood, it costs so much money. Just the infrastructure people don't see. It's hard to explain why a road costs so much. Well, it's not necessarily the road. The roads are expensive, but it's also that water line, that sewer line, that curb and gutter, that storm drain. It's all that stuff that you don't see because it doesn't physically touch you like carpet and walls and lighting, And it's, and that stuff, that's one thing to remember is that type of infrastructure is resoundingly, it's just as expensive as new construction. And some people, I think, kind of overlook that because when you're used to building within existing city limits, all that's already there. You don't have to provide it. But when we wanted to do the new high school, then we had to talk to Steve about installing a lot of water line, a lot of sewer, and just, the electricity for the lights, it's just, that's a huge burden. That's a huge burden for a lot of these western North Dakota communities that are already built in their existing infrastructure, and now they have to start expanding. That's a huge issue that we run into.
When I don't dare share out lot numbers because they're very much estimates, but the city has between 120 and 200 build-ready lots, but the county has quite a few too in rural residential subdivisions where they're build-ready. I don't quite know that number. I think it's somewhere around 100. So
Yeah, I don't have any idea.
so yeah, we have an opportunity with our build-ready lots to move.
The difference our issue is if there is real water out there, the trouble is they came in and said, okay, so people understand a little bit of the rural water issue of like this lot ready or whatever you want to classify it as. Okay, they came out and run the line there and they said, okay, we got 25 houses. Well, they supplied 25. Well, if they wanted to supply for 50, they have to, that input cost hits everybody right away. And then they have to, if somebody builds, then they pay back. There's the difference. No offense. The city has a little different. Theirs is a little different deal. They can pressurize and do things where we set a line in.
But the thing with rural,
capped at.
and if you're taking federal monies for rural water, you can't overbuild.
No,
if you're getting federal money for rural water for 100 homes and you want to supply it to 200 homes, that line's going to be drastically undersized because you can't overbuild with federal funding. The first time we put rural water into McKenzie County, 2004, right? I don't know. Well, I don't know. Were any of you guys, was I the only one back at that time?
I wasn't
Yes.
back, but I think it's
Yes.
around that time because it was after I moved away. Because my parents
Yep.
were one of the first people
Yep.
that signed up on rural water, and they've
Yep.
had it
And
since around that time.
and we put in all that rural water into McKenzie County, and all of a sudden it was undersized because, hey, well, I'm going to tie into that. I'm going to tie into that. Guys move home, they're building out on the farm. Hey, I'm going to tie into that. Well, it's drastically undersized. We need to upgrade that line, upsize that line. Well, why? Why didn't you build it right the first time? Funny story, we built it right the first time. We weren't expecting a massive boom to hit western North Dakota and bring in an extra 10,000 people. But then again, with federal funding and the regulations that were set on us, it's not a build it's kind of a build to suit at that exact time. So that's one thing a lot of people I don't think understand. We couldn't overbuild as much as we would have liked to because the regulations that were put on that construction. And that's the county deals with that every day. Every time someone wants to build on a line that's already taxed.
I know that federal funding, we had, Scott came in and spoke about it. We can overbuild, but they reduce, okay, if they're going to fund for, we'll say 50 homes, here's what you'll get. If we say, well, we want to increase the size line, if I got it right, make it bigger, case it grows, they decrease their federal funding.
percentage.
Yeah.
We have to put more skin in the game. Where if you say this is what we're building for, here you go. It's easier to get your money. So it's a double-edged sword. Okay, we want to, because that was my question too. I'm like, well, why are we put in a big line? And like, so Scott explained that to us here.
How much do you want to spend?
Yeah,
Right? It's all about
exactly.
greenbacks.
Well, and my house is a perfect example. So I live very close to where I happen to grow up, and the rural water line went right in front of my house. But we weren't able to tie in because there wasn't enough capacity in the line. So we actually had to wait a number of years, probably 20 years from the time the water actually first went in, and certainly 10 since the time we applied to get rural water at our place. So, I mean, I know it's frustrating and everyone's in the same boat, but it can't have stale water sitting in line either.
Nope.
That's not good. So
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay. There's one project we haven't talked about yet, and I want to hit that one quick before we do our roundtable. Ag Expo. Do you want to take that one, Howdy?
Yeah. Well, that project, we had talked since I think the first time I was on the board 6 years ago. Be going on 7 coming. But they were talking about fairground expansion, and money was set aside, and nothing happened. Finally, it's like, we got to do something. And the 4-H kids, I mean, they have outgrown the old fairgrounds. I mean, that was a big thing. I mean, it was, I remember I was on the fair board for many years, and I remember every fair, and Vawnita, you can agree to it. Well, it's going to be too hot for show day, so we have to start at 7 in the morning, whatever.
Showing pigs at 6:30 a.m.
Or it's going to storm. Are we going to go have the sail over in the other deal? We got to put pens, alleys up. And I mean, it was a constant battle of what can we do, what can we can't do. The rodeo without a covered grandstand, I know it sounds petty, but that's a huge selling point for the older community. They don't want to sit in the sun when it's 90 degrees out. And it came to fruition. I don't know if you want to call it pleasure or a curse. I was on from the very beginning of the first drawing that came about on that project. And if you want to talk about, well, so is Erica. She was involved in it too. To see that project and be involved in such a huge project like that, and then to see the people that come out there and use it, and the kids, the 4-H kids, and I will say our first year, and this is what's so cool about our community. We talk about our community being a community. The first day, first deal, I mean, FCI did a great job, got the project done. We cut the ribbon the day of the fair. First event held at the deal was a county fair.
And you held your breath that the HVAC worked.
Yes. It was, wasn't expected to be done. Mm-hmm. We go weigh steers. We bring steers into the arena. They're slipping. We stopped everything, and in a matter of 20 minutes, we hauled dirt and leveled and did everything because nobody knew. And now we've fixed it since then. But that's what's so great about it. I mean, the community events that can be held out there, and I think overall, just the turnout of the people that come to the fair, like, it's encouraging to talk to the elders and say, it's so much fun to come to the fair and watch my grandkids, or just sit there and watch. They don't do it anymore, but to be involved and sit around, and we can go walk the carnival, but yet we can come in where it was air conditioned. I remember the old fairgrounds, they had that little covered building between the bathroom and the 4-H or the life booth, right?
Yeah.
That was the shade, and that was the air conditioning.
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
not a
that's what I'm
stitch
saying.
of
Shade,
But
yeah.
just to see
Climate
the
control.
the people that are out there, I guess. And what was nice is, what's great is the Rough Rider Center and the Ag Expo are working really close together on, hey, I can't do this event. Can you do it? Yes. And they're, I think that was a big, at first, maybe I'm wrong, I'm assuming, but part of it. Are you
just
competing?
just
No,
a
we're not
concern of how it would
Yeah.
all work.
It was, and that was. I know the people are asking, is the county going in? Is county going into competition with the city? I'm like, absolutely not.
No.
We're gonna host two. Initially, we were thinking we're hosting two kind of separate areas, right? Because you're not bringing a 4-wheel drive tractor into the basement of the Rough Rider Center. We can't get it through the door. B, we're not going to have monster trucks. We had monster trucks out at the Ag Expo. I could talk about the Ag Expo for hours. That place is amazing because I love loud trucks. Loud exhaust, big tires, and high cubic inch motors. And you get that at the Ag Expo.
But I think that was the big thing. I think at first that was the thing. Are we trying to punch each other in the eye here? And it's like, no, we're not trying to take from you. We're doing something on the agriculture side, because we've had farm shows out there. And I think they used to do the boat show in there, and they realized, hey, they can host it. It got too big. And so they're like, hey, we're going to do it out there, like the pumpkin stuff they do together. I mean, they work together on everything. We're doing separate things, but what are we doing? We're trying to make our community better. What can we do to attract instead of having the people go to Wilson or go to Dickinson or go to Bismarck, we're trying to do events here in the county, keeping the revenue in the county, and people are, I think, working. I think it's a nice fit. So it's a great building, great facility. I enjoy it. I mean, it wasn't cheap, but you know what? I think it's going to pay off at the end.
It puts heads in beds. It puts people in our restaurants.
Yeah.
It gets people on our main street. So there's always something fun going on out there. That place is, it's a lot of fun.
Well, in both facilities, the Rough Rider Center and the Ag Expo, from the design to the teams that lead them both, they complement each other. So even the convention space, the rooms are sized differently. And so in our office, the tourism director is out of our office, and he does flat sheets. And when somebody calls and says, we're thinking about doing an event in Watford City, he provides them the flat sheets for both venues, and then people can sort through and determine what they need and want in terms of their convention and their event space, and it works really well. And then like I said, those two teams collaborate on projects, and then they complement each other. And both facilities have become regionally renowned and known for a place that people want to host and bring events. So just a really quick statistic in September. So John Suter, who works for County Economic Development, he pulls together fact sheets for each month. In the month of September, Watford City, McKenzie County, the surrounding communities, WatfordCityEvents.com, hosted 54 events. And so for a community our size to host 54 events, one of the recognized value propositions that our community has is we're small. We're a small town community. We know each other. We take care of each other. We have a small town culture of caring for each other. But then we have the facilities, the amenities, and the vibrancy of a large community. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. Does anybody have anything we haven't covered that you're like, I want the public to know about this?
I think one of the other entities I think is a huge deal is it spins off the Bakken Area Skills Center is our sporting the gun range, sportsman club, our range, our gun range. I think that is really taken off, and I guess given that's part of our gross production tax money that we were able to help build that facility. Yeah, and it goes back to the beginning of Stenberg's donated land for the Rough Rider Center.
Yep.
I mean, like Brooks Cummer did the land for the shooting club. I mean, there's so much community involvement, but yet at the end, you still need to build something on it no matter what you get. And that's where we were able to contribute to that. And I've seen, because my kids are in 4-H archery, they have practice, and they have to have a 5:30, a 6:30, and a 7:30 because they have so many kids that they can't all be out there at once. And that's a big building. And they want to host state. I mean, it's just attractive of what they can do out there. And I mean, that was just another one, I guess, that I think of that we've done, as part of it. And I one other thing I really is the airport, the expansion of that airport.
You bet.
That was done. Yes, they got some funding, but I remember I was involved in that, and I remember Ari came in and gave us some options for the runway, and it's like, why do we want to? We had the money. Let's put the cement runway in, so we didn't have to re-tear it up because they were going to do asphalt. And then I think it's being used more. I think the oil company they are flying more in here versus not knocking Williston, but I think they're able to come here.
I was told it's one of the, is it the second or the third busiest municipal airport in the state of North Dakota? Mandan is number one. And I think it's us. I think
Dickinson.
we're in maybe. Well, Dickinson isn't considered municipal
No, that's
because they
true.
got a,
Commercial.
and that takes it.
That's
But
true.
I think we're we're number 2 or number 3 for the busiest municipal airport in the state of North Dakota.
So them are two items
Okay.
that stick out. I guess I think of it as just kind of a neat little,
And
and
then-
it's a wide variety. If you throw that in with the expo and the Rough Rider Center, you're getting 3 different worlds if you want to paint that. I mean,
And we do a monthly community orientation, and so we do a quick orientation in the classroom. We actually do it at the Heritage Park, which is another amazing facility in town. Is our North Dakota Oil Museum and McKenzie County Heritage Park. But we take people to the Rough Rider Center, to the Shooting Sports Club, and to the Ag Expo. And what the Shooting Sports Club offers the community is amazing. And we have surveyed different companies during their safety meetings on what livability they want to see, amenities they want to see in the community, and that the shooting sports hit high. And so it was so easy, I think, to have public participation in that project because the people that are working here and live here, that matters to them. And from hunter safety that they offer out there to the youth programming, to the great events that they bring from the indoor archery tournament in different leagues and stuff. So that has been a great asset and solved a problem where people were just shooting wherever they could out on public land or, just it needed to happen. So that's a great asset.
Vawnita, just before we wrap up too, some of the other, we've talked a lot about buildings and different things too, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say all of the contributions that have gone into parks and rec in the community, whether that's walking trails. The county finally, after, 6-8 years, finally got permits to dredge and riprap up at Tobacco Gardens to really make that recreation area more viable for the future. But, we talk about all of the things outdoors that have happened, contributions to the Mattahay Trail and making sure that can stay up and running. The athletic parks that are community. I mean, we have so many kids that are in soccer and baseball, and it's crazy to me to think about all of these different things that are happening in our community in outdoor spaces that have really helped connect people. Whether it's just sometimes not being able to get somewhere is just because it's not safe to travel there. So the walking trails and the sidewalks and all of those things now have really helped with that outdoor aspect to our community. We live in such a pretty part of the state that it's really nice to be outdoors and be able to explore those areas too.
Definitely. So we're living in McKenzie County. We want to continue to welcome newcomers to the community. I want to thank each and every one of you, one, for the work that you do. You're elected officials. And so sometimes that's like, I don't want to say double burden, but you really have two sides of that coin where you're serving and representing the public, and you also have a responsibility from a budgetary standpoint, an administrative standpoint, a management standpoint. So I want to thank each and every one of you for the work that you do, the commitment that you have to the community, and we hope to have more of these conversations. And so as we enter the legislative session, we've got a legislative session coming up in January. I feel really good about a shared vision that we have for our community, for Western North Dakota. Anything you want to say to the public before we sign off?
I would just encourage anyone to get involved. Really the best way to know what's happening in your community is to reach out and find out. And volunteer or ask what's going on, attend meetings, reach out to people and really get to know what that is. You might find something that's new to you and you're really passionate about and will add a lot of value to your life, or you might understand things a little bit better and be able to communicate that to your friends. So get involved, ask the questions, and everyone here is happy to have newcomers here. We want those new faces and we want everyone participating. That's what makes us such a vibrant community to live in.
If you want to serve on a board, go on our newly developed website. Thank you. And shoot me an email. It's tough to find people to serve on boards. They're more than happy to wave their hands and yell fire in a crowded theater, but nobody wants to pick up the hose to put out the fires. So if you're interested, jump on. And then in 2 years, we'll bring this up again when the Theodore Roosevelt National Library is constructed. But I'll tell you, welcome to Watford City. You're going to want to stay here. You like it?
Oh, I just have to say it's been enjoyable. I mean, I will say it's, I've been being on a board like the commissioner, and I'm sure Phil Mayer and, being involved there because the auditor. Just call, ask. I guess that's my biggest deal is I have a lovely wife that slaps my hands a lot on social media that I don't respond because I see a lot of comments and it's irritating. Just call us. I mean, I think that's what people need to realize. Just because we sit where we sit, we're still that small community. I want to visit. I tell a lot of people I only have one set of ears and one set of eyes. That's it. That's all I got. I need help. Inform me. Help me. You know what I mean? My phone's on. I answer. We visit and conversate. And I will say I came back to Watford City years ago, just a farm and ranch, and I look at now what my kids have the opportunity to participate in the sport. I mean, all the events. I think of when we were kids, not that we got in trouble a lot. Some of us did, Phil. But no, I'm just kidding.
There are stories that should never be told.
No, but I'm just saying we didn't have a lot, but we made fun with what we had. These kids have an opportunity, and I think the sky's the limit if you move to Watford City. You go from the education program to the workforce. I mean, what do you want to do? Yes, we're not a Bismarck, we're not a Fargo, we're not a bigger city, but I think we have a lot to offer. And at the end of the day, if something does go wrong and you need help, the community's here to back you. And it shows time and time again of things that happen. Our community, it don't matter if we are 20,000, 18,000 or whatever, something happens, this community will wrap around you and make you feel at home and take care of you until whatever does happen. So move here, live it. I love it. I'm not going anywhere, and I hope my kids don't. I mean, maybe college, but come back. So I enjoy it. I really love Watford City.
Absolutely. I'm going to close it with this. When people from outside our community ask, how do you get the things done that you get done? It's innovation, it's collaboration, it's communication, and it's caring for each other. And that's it. The one thing I want to do, Brock, you're going to have to help me. Both the city and the county, the city launched their new website last week. The county's going to, I believe, next week or in the month of November. Brock, what's the address?
cityofwatfordcity.gov.
cityofwatfordcity.gov. We're moving off of .com to .gov. And county?
McKenzie County ND.gov, I believe.
McKenzieCountyND.gov.gov. So Google search, they're optimized. They come up. They're beautiful. You can get into the spy bar search and you can find the things you need. So that's going to be my shout out to John Suter and to Brock as well.
The old addresses will take you to the new site, and there's no work done on your side.
Excellent. The old addresses will take you to the new sites because these people are so smart and great at what they do. So I just want to thank you guys again. We're going to do it again. We're going to have a great legislative session. We're going to move forward and keep making McKenzie County a great place to live and to work and to play. So thank you all so very much.
Thank you.